Sam. Welcome back to another episode of Vinyl Bites, where I take a random record from my collection and talk about it in a bite-sized video. Today we'll be talking about Queen, A Night at the Opera. Now this heavy bad boy is one of my most prized possessions. The Queen Studio Collection. I paid $800 for this, worth every dollar. There it is. Now I might go through the box set another day, but for now I'm just going to talk about this album. A Night at the Opera, commonly regarded as Queen's masterpiece. Every time I listen to this album, it's always a pleasure. This is Queen's fourth album, and I think by this time they'd really come into their own sound. The first two Queen records, they were still sort of finding their footing, despite the fact that Queen 2 is actually my favourite Queen album. Their third album, Sheer Heart Attack, is incredibly energetic. There are songs like Stone Cold Crazy where you could see the very early works of what was to be thrash metal. But come their fourth album, they had really start to master their incredibly glamorous and operatic rock sound. I can't call this my favourite Queen album, despite the fact that I do enjoy all the songs on here. Much like Sgt. Pepper's, stylistically the songs go all over the place, but still it somehow comes through in a really satisfying package. We have the track listing here, and it's a nice gatefold as well, with all the lyrics. You can see the gentleman down the bottom there. You can see at the bottom there, no synthesizers. Very proud of that fact they were. Now, as part of the Queen Studio Collection, each album is pressed onto a coloured vinyl which links to the colours that are seen on the cover. So for this particular album, it's pressed onto a gorgeous 180 gram white vinyl. It's really good that they put in some nice inner sleeves for these as well. They did not package them in the original inner sleeves, that would be this one here. I just leave this as is. The pressings of these records matched what the original pressings of the albums were like. So this is printed on a very matte-like paper. There's no real gloss. The illustration here is also embossed, so it pops out a little bit. Now I would happily talk in depth about every single song on this album because I love this album, love it front to back, despite it not being my favourite, but that just goes to show how amazing Queen are. What I think is particularly special about A Night at the Opera is that it really showcases how talented all four members of Queen were as songwriters. Now, obviously a lot of the tracks on this album were written by Freddie Mercury, but there are 3 tracks in a row which aren't written by Freddie Mercury. First of them being I'm in Love with My Car, which is a Roger Taylor track. They sort of poke fun at the song in the film Bohemian Rhapsody, which I don't think is that great of a film. Nonetheless, I'm in Love with My Car I think is an amazing song. It takes such a silly and fun idea of being in love with this car, but takes itself really seriously and is incredibly dramatic and operatic about it. It does it so well though that you can't help but be sucked in. You're not laughing at it, you're enjoying it with it. This is then followed by You're My Best Friend, which of course is played on the radio at almost all times of the day. This song's actually written by John Deacon, the bass player. The song was inspired by his wife and domestic bliss. Such a lovely, optimistic and happy song. After that we have 39. Now I went and saw Queen recently, and the one song that I really wanted to see out of any Queen song, I just really wanted to see Brian May sing 39. And then he did, and I cried. Because men can cry too. The song 39 is about a bunch of sailors that go out exploring the world, and it's written from the perspective of this man that's just really longing for the touch of his wife, but he understands that going out and exploring the world will bring about a better world for future generations. So it really makes you think about the sacrifices that you make in your life to provide something better for who's to come next. I just think it's a truly beautiful song. There are of course other songs on this album that are written by Brian May, but of course we've got to talk about Freddie Mercury. Bohemian Rhapsody is on this album. Everything that's been said about Bohemian Rhapsody has been said. It's one of the greatest songs of all time. Some would even say it is the greatest song of all time. A lot of people who aren't familiar with Queen's albums tend to think that Bohemian Rhapsody is on Queen 2. A very easy mistake to make given that the music video has a nod to the album cover. However, the song is on this album. I think it's incredibly important that people actually go and listen to Queen albums rather than just listening to the greatest hits. Even though albums like the greatest hits and the greatest hits 2 are such a fantastic collection of fantastic songs. But in all honesty, All of Queen's albums are a collection of fantastic songs, and there are just a bunch of hidden gems that people don't really know about. Listening to songs like Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon and Seaside Rendezvous, you really get a sense of how truly rompy Freddie Mercury was. Of course, there's the song Love of My Life, which Freddie wrote for Mary Austin, a woman who I believe he truly did wholeheartedly love, but his body just needed to be elsewhere. I really cannot praise this album enough. It is front to back just so much fun. And even though it's not personally my favourite Queen album, I'd still happily call this one of the greatest albums of all time. If you had to pick one Queen studio album to have in your collection, and if you pick this, you'd be making a very good choice. I'm a massive Queen fan, so of course I've got to have the studio collection. Hopefully one day I'll go through each album from worst to best. But even at Queen's worst, they're still really good. If I had to rate this, I'd probably give it a very strong 9. That's all I really want to say about this album. The most important thing to take away here is that you should definitely branch out from those greatest hits albums. Listen to a Queen record. There's so many hidden gems that you might really love. Now, we're currently in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, so jump online, find your local record store, and buy from them online because they really need our help at the moment. Stay safe, I'll see you next time.